Hello everyone, welcome to ENbreezEN, the daily current affairs news analysis by Team Enlight. The topics for today are Asian Development Bank, Prompt Corrective Action Framework, Food Policy, Production Linked Incentive PLI scheme for synthetic textiles. So the first topic for today is Asian Development Bank. Why was this in news? Because India and ADB signed a $300 million loan to expand the rural connectivity in Maharashtra. So what is the ADB? It is a regional development bank. It was established in 1966 and Japan holds the largest share in the ADB, followed by the US. So what is the aim of the ADB? So mainly it is focused on social development by reducing poverty in the Asia Pacific through inclusive growth, sustainable growth and regional integration. It basically invests in infrastructure, health, public administration system, helping the nations to reduce the impact of climate change and manage their natural resources. So how will this loan help Maharashtra? This can be in general use for various loans or international organizations investing in India. First of all, it will help in improving the conditions and safety of the 5,000 kilometers of rural roads, and it will connect the rural communities and help in the agricultural growth, and socio-economic centers will be connected. Next, it will also help in Maharashtra's economic recovery from COVID-19 by creating rural employment and transforming the agriculture. And it will empower women, as 25% of all the jobs will be provided to the women, and it will create 3.1 million persons day of employment. So prelims related facts, the headquarters for ADB are in Manila, Philippines. It is an official United Nations observer. The members of this bank are United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific members, as well as non-regional developed countries. So one must remember from prelims point of view that there are 68 members and only 49 of them are from Asia. This is important to remember. Also, what is the voting system over here? It is the weighted voting system similar to the World Bank, where the distribution is in proportion with the members' capital subscription. And the report published by the ADB is the Asian Development Outlook. So let's move on to the next topic for today, that is the Prompt Corrective Action Framework. So why was this in news? The RBI has taken out the UCO Bank from the Prompt Corrective Action Framework. So what is this PCA? So PCA framework is under the banks it is for the banks which with the weak financial metrics are put under the RBI watch. It basically aims to check the problem of non-performing assets in the Indian banking sector. What are the trigger points or parameters based on which the PCA is put on certain banks? So first one is the capital to risk weighted asset ratio, that is CRAR, the net NPA, non-performing assets, return on assets, and tier 1 leverage ratio. Which institutions can come under the PCA norms? Previously, only commercial banks were to be applicable under the PCA, but now even PCA can be applied to cooperative banks as well as the NBFCs. Over here in the figure, I have shown what are the sort of restrictions and corrective measures which are put under the PCA. So they can be restrictions on the dividends, then capital from foreign banks, etc., restrictions on branch expansion, etc. So from mains perspective, it is important to understand what are the challenges with the PCA. So the main challenge is that it impacts the rating of the bank, hence the consumer confidence, credit history of the banks becomes poor, and it raises the questions regarding the management. Basically, it will affect the amount of investments in the bank. Then it also is a point of contention between the government and the RBI, as when the PCA norms are put over a bank, they are unable to lend or lend further. Hence, there is less growth in businesses, etc., and it affects the economic growth of the country through the ripple effect, and it may also create crowding out effect. Also, the tussle between the government and the RBI over the PCA norms leads to a negative impact on investments in India. So what are some alternative solutions? The first one is the recommendations from the Narsimha Committee on structural reforms such as the mergers of the Indian banks to deal better with the NPA crisis. So next is dealing with the core issues of governance impacting the banking sector. Next is the Public Sector Asset Rehabilitation Agency, PARA, that is the bad bank, which was mentioned in the economic survey. So having such institutions will help to deal with the large bad debt cases, such as similar thing was done in the East Asian economies. Then a very important part of dealing with the NPAs is the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code must be actively and properly implemented. So over here I have given the definition for non-performing assets and the CAR norms. You can look into this. So the next topic is food policy. This topic is mainly important from mains point of view. So why was this in news? The UN Secretary General will convene the Food Systems Summit, which aims for transformation of the global food systems in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, that is SDGs, by 2030. SDGs itself is very important from both prelims and mains point of view. So what does the food systems mean? It basically means production, aggregation, processing, distribution, consumption, disposal of food. What are the challenges in the food system? First one is the problems created by Green Revolution. So in a way, Green Revolution was really good for India as it made the country from a food deficit to a food surplus country, but it's also brought a lot of problems with it. Starting with waterlogging, soil erosion, groundwater depletion, excessive use of fertilizers and pesticides leading to soil degradation, lopsided agricultural development. For example, the fruits of Green Revolution were only concentrated in Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, etc., and they were not seen in Eastern India, etc. And also it led to unsustainability of agriculture. Next is problems with current agricultural policy. Our policies are basically based on the deficit mindset of the 1960s, and the procurement, subsidies and water policies are biased towards especially the rice and wheat, and three crops, mainly rice, wheat, sugarcane. They corner up to 75 to 80% of the irrigated water. Next comes the hunger and nutrition. So the malnutrition and stunting in country, the levels have not declined even now. Also, along with malnutrition and stunting, etc., obesity is on rise, and along with other lifestyle diseases like diabetes, heart attacks, high blood pressure, etc. Next comes climate change in food. So food sector emits around 30% of the world's greenhouse gases, which is done through livestock rearing, stubble burning, methane production from wasted and decaying food, etc. So what can be done, or what are the steps we can do to form better food systems and policies? The first one is having better agricultural patterns. So diversification of crop patterns towards millets, that is pulses, which are basically called the hardy crops. They require less amount of water, they can grow in drier, and they are mainly resistant to climate or hot heat waves, etc. Then also investing in oil seeds, horticulture, etc. Then cropping according to the agroclimatic conditions and water availability. Equal distribution of water, sustainable and climate resilient as well as carbon smart practices in agriculture must be introduced. Then technology must play a very important role in agriculture, that is using of precision agriculture, better forecasting of weather, use of micro irrigation techniques, mapping soil moisture, and mechanized agriculture can help reduce the cost of agriculture as well as productivity can be improved. Next is improving the income of small farmers is very important and key to having better agriculture and food systems. So how can that be done? Links to input and output of the markets, then draw benefits from the diversification and connecting to value chains in the agro industry. Amul is a very good example as it improved not just the incomes but provided better livelihoods in the region of Anand, especially for women. Then farmer producer organizations can help the small farmers to get better prices because their bargaining power improves. For example, the ITC's e-Chopal. Then women empowerment is very important in the agricultural sector, as we have seen womenization of agricultural field. Hence, organizations like Kudumbashri in Kerala, etc., can really help women empowerment in the agricultural sector. Improvement in health and education. So first of all, improvement in dietary habits. For example, the Eat Lancet diet, which calls for safe and healthy diversified diets, better primary health care, better awareness about nutrition and health. So according to a report, it was observed that uneducated women are more likely to have early pregnancy, raise malnourished children, and hence it will lead to a vicious cycle of poor family health. So improving the education of women in the family is very important for improving the health of the family in general. Next is strengthening of the public distribution system, ICDS, midday meal programs, etc. And this is the last point is very important, that is including non-staples like pulses, oils, biofortified cereals, etc. under the PDS system itself. Then role of non-agricultural sector in improving the food systems. So basically almost more than 50% of India's population is employed in agricultural related fields, and there is huge pressure on the agricultural sector for providing income to this huge population. So what we need to do is transfer this population into more labor intensive manufacturing and service sector jobs. This will improve the income because as agriculture cannot provide enough income to these smallholders and informal workers. Then next is in strengthening the rural SMEs, and food processing is also a solution. Also, the industry should help producing healthy processed foods. So way forward, we can say that we must have an IPCC for food. Also, these following 5 tracks must be focused for any policy making related to food, that is, ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all, shift to sustainable consumption patterns, boost nature positive production, advance equitable livelihoods, and build resilience to vulnerability, shock, and stress. The last topic for today is production linked incentive scheme for synthetic textiles. So why was this in news? Because 10,683 crore PLI for textile gets cabinet green light. So what is this PLI scheme? Basically, this scheme aims to give companies incentives on incremental sales from products manufactured in domestic units. It also invites foreign companies to set up units in India and encourage local companies to set up and expand existing manufacturing units. So for the synthetic textiles, currently the scheme is only for man-made fibers and technical textiles only. So what is the current state of textile production in India? So in terms of employment, textile is the second largest employer after agricultural sector in India. It provides direct employment to 45 million people. Then India is amongst the world's largest producers for textile products and apparels, and domestic textiles and apparels industry contribute 5% of India's GDP. Now what are the problems with the Indian textile sector? So basically the share of textile in India's export has fallen from 24% in 2000 to just 11% in 2020. Also, the Indian companies and exporters have continuously lost market to more aggressive rivals like China, Bangladesh, and Thailand. India is strong in cotton textiles but not in the MMF, which accounts for 70% of the textile sector. That is, we are in complete opposition. So how does this particular scheme help India? So this scheme will be able to take care of the disability that the Indian companies face to the foreign competitors and generate economies of scale in the sector to help compete with Bangladesh and Vietnam. It will leverage economies of scale as mentioned previously. It will also have a good presence, it will help India have good presence worldwide, and since MMF and technical textiles are what is the global demand, which are the products that will be covered under this scheme. So 40 lines of apparels and 14 lines of fabrics in the MMF that are among the top traded ones globally. So in which India has a very poor presence of less than 5%, and also 10 segments of technical textiles. So I briefly told here what are technical textiles. Basically, they are functional fabrics that have applications across various industries like automobiles, civil engineering, construction, agriculture, etc. For example, bulletproof jackets, car seats, sportswear, etc. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day ahead.